The shovel struck earth with a sickening thud. Amaka's hands trembled as she dug deeper into the sacred forest floor, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Moonlight filtered through the ancient baobab tree above, casting twisted shadows that seemed to watch her terrible work. Sweat poured down her face, mixing with tears she refused to acknowledge. She had 3 hours before dawn, 3 hours before the village awoke, 3 hours to bury her sister alive and take everything that should have been hers. But let us go back to the beginning, to understand how love between twins could rot into something so poisonous that one would become the other's executioner. In the prosperous Igbo kingdom of Umunze, there lived twin sisters who were the pride of their village. Amaka and Amara, daughters of the most renowned medicine woman in the land, were so identical that even their own mother sometimes had to look twice. They had the same deep brown eyes, the same graceful walk, the same melodious laugh that could brighten the darkest day. But the ancestors, in their wisdom, had given them different hearts. Amara possessed a gentleness that drew people like moths to flame. When she walked through the market, traders would lower their prices just to see her smile. Children followed her like a beloved aunt, and elders nodded approvingly at her respectful greetings. She carried her beauty with humility, never once boasting or showing pride. Amaka, though equally beautiful and talented, had always lived in that shadow. She was sharper, more ambitious, more driven. Where Amara was content to help their mother prepare medicines and tend to the sick, Amaka dreamed of greater things. She wanted to be seen, to be chosen, to be first for once in her life. And she had been patient, swallowing her resentment like bitter medicine until Prince Chukwuemeka arrived. The prince came to their village on the 7th day of the harvest season, his arrival announced by the beating of royal drums. He was tall and handsome, with the bearing of a warrior and the wisdom of a scholar. His father, the Oba, had decreed it was time for him to take a wife, and the prince had chosen to find his bride not among the noble houses, but among the common people. "I seek a woman of substance," the prince declared at the village square, his voice carrying over the assembled crowd. "Beauty fades, but character endures. In 7 days during the Yam Festival, I will choose my bride. Let any worthy woman present herself." That night, Amaka could not sleep. She lay on her mat, listening to Amara's peaceful breathing beside her, and imagined herself as queen. She would wear coral beads and fine wrappers. She would have servants and influence. She would finally step out of her sister's shadow and into the light. The next day, the prince began his courtship. He visited homes, spoke with families, and spent time with the eligible women of the village. When he came to the twins' compound, their mother welcomed him with kola nut and palm wine. "Your Highness honors our humble home," their mother said, her eyes twinkling as she watched the prince's gaze move between her daughters. "The honor is mine," the prince replied. "I have heard much about the twin daughters of the great healer. They say you are as skilled as you are beautiful." Amaka spoke first, her words carefully chosen. "My prince, we are simple servants of our people. We use the gifts the ancestors have given us to ease suffering and bring healing." "A noble calling," the prince said, but his eyes had already drifted to Amara, who sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. "And you?" he asked Amara gently. "What do you wish for in life?" Amara looked up, and when she spoke, her voice was soft but sincere. "Only to be useful, Your Highness, to leave the world a little better than I found it, nothing more." Something shifted in the prince's expression. Amaka saw it, a softening around his eyes, a slight lean forward. In that moment, she knew. He had already chosen. Everything else would be mere formality. Over the next 6 days, Amaka watched helplessly as the prince courted them both, but clearly favored Amara. He brought gifts of fine cloth and jewelry, but the better pieces always seemed to find their way to Amara's hands. He told stories of the kingdom, but his eyes always sought Amara's reactions. He asked questions about healing and wisdom, and while Amaka's answers were clever, Amara's were kind. "The prince will surely choose Amara," the village women whispered at the stream. "See how he looks at her, like she is water and he is dying of thirst." "Such a blessed girl," another added. "Beauty, kindness, and now a prince. Some people have all the fortune." Amaka heard every word. Each comment was a thorn pressed deeper into her heart. She began to notice things she had never paid attention to before. How people smiled more readily at Amara. How children ran to her first. How their mother's eyes softened differently when looking at her younger twin. "It is not fair," Amaka whispered to herself one night. "We are the same. We share the same face, the same blood. Why does she get everything?" On the 6th night, Amaka could not bear it anymore. She followed the prince when he left their compound and watched from the shadows as he paused outside their home. To her horror, she saw him place a small wrapped package at their doorstep, directly in front of where Amara slept. In the morning, Amara would find it first. Another gift, another sign of his favor. Something broke inside Amaka that night. The jealousy that had been simmering for years, fed by a lifetime of small slights and comparisons, finally boiled over. She could not let this happen. She would not spend the rest of her life watching her sister live the life that should have been hers. The idea came to her like a serpent's whisper. If Amara disappeared, if something happened to her, the prince would have no choice but to turn to the remaining twin. No one could tell them apart anyway. She could become Amara. She could have everything. Amaka spent that night in the sacred forest, the place where their ancestors were buried, where the boundary between the living and the spirit world grew thin. She found a secluded spot beneath the ancient baobab tree and began to dig. Her hands blistered and bled, but she did not stop. She dug until she had a hole deep enough, and then she covered it with branches and leaves, leaving only a small bamboo reed poking through for air. "Forgive me, ancestors," she whispered into the darkness, "but I cannot live this way anymore." The next morning, the day before the Yam festival, Amaka woke her sister before dawn. "Amara," she whispered urgently, "Mother needs us to gather herbs from the sacred forest, special ones for tomorrow's festival blessing. She said we must go before the sun rises, while the dew is still fresh." Amara rubbed her eyes sleepily. "Both of us. Cannot one go?" "She specifically said both," Amaka lied smoothly. "She said the ritual requires twins. Please, sister, you know how important tomorrow is for the village." Amara, trusting as always, agreed. They dressed quietly and slipped out of the compound while their mother still slept. The forest was dark and filled with the sounds of waking birds. Amara walked ahead, humming softly, completely unaware of what awaited her. "Sister, are you certain Mother said the herbs were this deep in the forest?" Amara asked as they walked further from the village. "We have never come this far before." "Just a little further," Amaka replied, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain Amara could hear it. "Near the baobab tree, that is where the most powerful plants grow." When they reached the spot, Amara noticed the freshly turned earth immediately, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Sister, what is this? Why is the ground disturbed here?" "I do not know," Amaka lied. "Perhaps an animal—" She did not finish the sentence. Instead, she picked up the heavy ceremonial staff she had hidden earlier and, with tears streaming down her face, struck her sister across the back of the head. Amara crumpled to the ground like a broken doll. She was not dead, only unconscious, her chest still rising and falling with shallow breaths. For a moment, Amaka stood frozen, the staff heavy in her hands, reality crashing down on her. "What have I done?" she whispered. "What have I done?" But it was too late to turn back now. She had come too far. Amaka dragged her sister's limp body to the concealed grave and, sobbing openly now, lowered her into the earth. "I am sorry," she wept as she began covering Amara with dirt. "I am so sorry, sister, but I cannot live in your shadow anymore. The prince should have been mine. Everything should have been mine. Why? Why were you always the favourite? We are the same." She worked quickly, covering Amara's body but leaving the bamboo reed in place, positioned near her sister's face. Some small mercy, she told herself. Some chance. She would have heir. Maybe the ancestors would save her. Maybe this was not really murder. When the grave was filled and disguised, Amaka took Amara's wrapper and her coral beads and ran to the river. She threw them in, letting the current carry them downstream. Then she tore her own clothes, scratched her arms and face, and ran back to the village, screaming, "Help! Somebody help! Amara, my sister!" The village erupted in chaos. Men grabbed torches and ran toward Amaka's cries. Women gathered around her, trying to calm her hysterics. "What happened, my child?" the village elder demanded. "We went to gather herbs," Amaka gasped between sobs. "Mother sent us. We were by the river, and Amara, she reached too far for a water plant. The bank gave way. She fell in. The current, it was so strong. I tried to save her. I jumped in after her, but I could not reach her. She went under. She is gone. My sister is gone." Their mother's wail of grief could be heard across the entire village. The prince, staying in the chief's compound, came running. When he saw Amaka, dishevelled and weeping, he immediately went to her. "I am so sorry," he said, his own voice thick with emotion. "Your sister, she was extraordinary." "She was everything," Amaka replied, and for once, she was not lying. They searched the river for 3 days, but found nothing except Amara's torn wrapper and beads caught on the rocks downstream. The village held a funeral without a body, and their mother wept until she had no tears left. "Something is wrong," their mother said on the 3rd night. "I cannot feel her in the ancestral realm. It is as if she is trapped between worlds." "Grief is making you imagine things, mother," Amaka said, but her hands trembled as she spoke. The prince, devastated but bound by duty, announced that he would still choose a bride at the festival. "Life must continue," he said sadly. "It is what Amara would have wanted." Amaka knew he would choose her now. She was the only option left. As the days passed, she began to play the role of Amara, adopting her sister's gentle mannerisms, her soft speech, her kind gestures. The prince seemed comforted by the similarities, perhaps seeing in Amaka a ghost of the woman he had truly wanted. But strange things began to happen. Every night, Amaka would wake to find dirt in her bed, though she had gone to sleep on clean sheets. In every reflection, whether in water or polished metal, she saw not her own face but Amara's, eyes wide with betrayal and fear. The wind seemed to whisper her name constantly. "Amaka, Amaka, Amaka. Why, sister, why?" "You are not yourself," the prince observed one afternoon. "You seem haunted." "I miss my sister," Amaka replied, which was not entirely untrue. She did miss Amara, missed her terribly, but it was the guilt more than grief that consumed her. Meanwhile, deep in the earth beneath the baobab tree, Amara had awakened in absolute darkness. She had screamed until her throat was raw, had clawed at the earth above her until her fingers bled. But the dirt was packed too tightly, and she was too weak from the blow to her head. In her desperation, she began to pray. "Annie, great Earth Mother, hear your daughter. I have been wronged. I have been betrayed by my own blood. If my time has truly come, I accept it. But if I am meant to live, if justice is meant to be served, please, I beg you, do not let me die like this." The Earth Goddess heard. That night, as Amaka tossed and turned in her guilt-ridden sleep, Annie spoke to the creatures of the forest. A wise old tortoise, an ancient being who had seen generations of humans rise and fall, received the message first. "Brothers and sisters of the forest," the tortoise called. A great injustice has been done. An innocent lies buried beneath the baobab. We must act. Amara's childhood dog, a faithful creature she had raised from a pup and who still wandered the forest looking for her, heard the call and came running. A parrot who had often perched on Amara's shoulder while she gathered herbs joined them. Together, guided by Annie's power, they began to dig. It took 3 days of constant digging, of earth being moved one pawful at a time. Inside her grave, Amara felt the vibrations, heard the scratching above, and hope, that fragile thing, began to bloom in her chest. If you are enjoying this story and want to see more amazing African folk tales, please hit that subscribe button, drop a comment below telling us what you think will happen next, and give this video a like. Your support helps us bring more stories to life. Now, back to our tale. On the morning of the wedding, Amaka stood in the ceremonial hut, being dressed in the bride's wrapper and coral beads. She should have felt triumphant. She had won. The prince was hers. The crown would be hers. Everything she had ever wanted was within her grasp. But her hands would not stop shaking. The scratches on her arms from the invisible presence that haunted her had become infected. She could not eat without tasting dirt. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Amara's face in that moment before the staff struck, the confusion and hurt in her expression. "You look beautiful," the prince said when he saw her, but there was sadness in his eyes. They both knew he was settling, marrying a replacement for the woman he truly loved. The entire village gathered for the ceremony. The drums beat their ancient rhythms. The oracle prepared to bless the union. Amaka stepped forward to stand beside the prince, her heart hammering so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. The oracle raised her hands to begin the blessing, but before she could speak, a commotion erupted at the edge of the gathering. People gasped, someone screamed. The drums stopped. Amara walked into the clearing. She was covered in dirt, her wrapper torn, her hair wild with leaves and twigs. Her dog walked beside her, the tortoise at her feet, the parrot on her shoulder. She looked like a spirit risen from the grave, which in a way she was. But her eyes were clear and filled with a terrible, quiet strength. "Amara," the prince breathed, his face draining of colour. "But we thought—" "I was dead," Amara finished, her voice hoarse but steady. "I was meant to be, buried alive beneath the baobab tree, left to suffocate in the darkness while my murderer took my place." The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Their mother pushed through the gathering, her hands pressed to her mouth. "My daughter, my child, I felt you were not gone." Amaka stood frozen, unable to speak, unable to move. The prince looked between the twins, understanding dawning like a horrific sunrise. "You?" he said to Amaka, his voice breaking. "You killed your own sister. For what? A crown? My hand in marriage? Amaka's voice cracked. "She had everything. Everyone loved her. You loved her. I just wanted to be chosen for once, to be first, to be seen." "So you tried to murder her?" the prince spat, stepping away as if Amaka carried a disease. "You buried your own twin alive?" The village oracle stepped forward, her eyes rolling back as the ancestors spoke through her. "Amaka, daughter of envy, child of darkness. The Earth Mother has spoken. The ancestors have judged. You have committed the gravest of sins, betraying the sacred bond of twins, attempting to murder your own blood. Your punishment is decreed." The oracle's voice deepened, taking on an otherworldly quality. "You shall be banished to wander the sacred forest for all eternity. You will see your sister's happiness, but never share in it. You will call out, but never be heard. You will cast no shadow, for you have lost your substance. You will have no reflection, for you have lost your true self." "No," Amaka whispered, falling to her knees. "Please, I am sorry. Amara sister, please, forgive me." Amara looked at her twin, this person who shared her face but not her heart, and tears finally fell. "I forgive you, sister, but I cannot undo what the ancestors have decreed. You made your choice when you put that earth over my face." Before the eyes of the entire village, Amaka began to fade. Her form became translucent, like morning mist. She reached out to her mother, but her hands passed through the older woman like smoke. "Mother," she sobbed. "Mother, I am sorry, I am so sorry." "My daughter," their mother wept. "What have you done? What have you done to yourself?" With a final cry of anguish, Amaka dissolved into the wind. Some said they could hear her voice in the rustling leaves, forever calling her sister's name, forever apologizing, forever too late. The oracle recovered, swaying slightly. "It is done. Justice has been served. Let this be a lesson to all who harbor jealousy in their hearts. Envy is a poison that kills the vessel that holds it." Amara and Prince Chukwuemeka married 1 month later in a ceremony filled with both joy and sorrow. They ruled the kingdom with wisdom and compassion for many years, and their story became legend. To this day, when the wind whispers through the forests of Umunze, old women tell their daughters that it is Amaka's voice, warning them about the dangers of jealousy. And mothers, when they see one child envying another, tell the tale of the twins. One who found happiness through kindness and one who lost everything, including herself, through jealousy. They say that a jealous heart digs 2 graves, one for the envied and one for oneself. They say that true beauty comes from within, and that no crown, no prince, no earthly treasure is worth betraying those you love. The story lives on, passed from generation to generation, a reminder that the darkness we carry inside can destroy us far more completely than any external enemy ever could. And in the sacred forests near the ancient baobab trees, if you listen carefully on quiet nights, you might still hear a voice on the wind, crying out in eternal regret, forever learning too late that what we do to others, we ultimately do to ourselves. The end.